Welcome to another episode of the Wood Couture podcast, recording live here in our regional office in Dubai. Today we have the absolute pleasure to welcome to our show the one and only Karen Taylor, founder and creative director of Pattern-Haus. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you for having me. Well, I've never been introduced like that before, but thank you.
Welcome. Well, for somebody with more than 2 decades of experience, that's the minimum we can do, to give a proper introductions, and which you deserve it,
Amazing. Thank you.
Great. Let's dive into your journey, I would say. So, tell us a bit about you, but above all, when you discovered that interior architecture was for you?
I was thinking about this the other day, actually, and I really did want to be a designer since I was probably 10 or 12, I think. And then I went to Chelsea Art College and then did interior architecture, and then managed to get my first job in the design industry doing exhibition design. So I've done, exhibition design, retail design, hospitality, which is predominantly the area I've spent the most amount of time in, which I absolutely love still, and also branched out into residential throughout the years as well.
Wow. And along your journey, have you had a mentor or many mentors or somebody that inspired you?
Yeah, I think mentoring, which is something that I think is really, really important. And I think mentoring should really start at a young age, especially for supporting women who are thinking about going into male-dominated industries, construction industry. And I've been really lucky that I've had great mentors, both within my studying time and within the studios that I've worked in. And those mentors are not just sometimes they can be the people sitting next to you, but I think, from the leaders at the top, that's the thing that filters down and creates culture in companies. And that's the thing that it's so important, especially within our industry, that we have to be really supporting of each other and be supportive of the junior designers and the next generation that are coming through.
What was the best advice you've been given?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think one of them is probably, which is something that you learn as a parent as well, is probably pick your fights. Is as designers, you get so engrossed in a project, and then sometimes, as we find a lot, we have to value engineer schemes, and you get so protective over what you've worked many months on. And you have to look at the bigger picture, and see and look at the reason why you're designing something and who you're designing it for. And I think that's probably one of the most important things, is you're designing it for a private client or it could be a really large brand. And that's the thing you've got to focus on, is the end user of what you're designing, and that keeps you focused. And I think that's what I've learned, and that's what probably the best advice I've had, is always focus on who you're designing it for and what the end result you want it to be, because you're the design guardian, and you have to protect your design, but so you have to realise that journey is not always in a straight line.
Right. And you mentioned one word that very interesting, value engineering. But as a designer, as a creative, as an artist, how does it make you feel every time they ask you to value engineer?
I mean, with the pressures on the hospitality industry at the moment, there is the cost of living, energy costs, the staff shortage. There's a lot of pressures on clients, and value engineering is something that we've had to learn about more and more, especially in the recent few years. You have to, at the end of the day, if you don't hit a budget, the client can't open and operate their business. So, but as I said before, you do get protective, and you have to look at all of the aspects of the design. So if, for example, if you've got a large square meterage, you can cut £10 off every square meter of tile. That could have a major impact, rather than changing all of the details that might have a big impact. So you've got to look at the picture and see how you can retain the design integrity of that skill that you've worked towards. But also, you kind of sit around a table with all of the consultants, and everybody kind of looks at each other and who's going to go first?
Who is the brave? They want to.
Who's going to offer to cut something from, whether it's mechanical or electrical or kitchen equipment, or so. But at the end of the day, we have to get it in a budget box to enable our clients to operate their business. So, and it's trying to do a lot of research on swapping and understanding materials that might be good alternatives, which obviously you guys probably have to look at all the time.
That's for a different kind of podcast, but we can talk forever.
That's a whole series.
Very much. I'm going to come back to that, but you spent more than 2 decades working for beautiful studios and third parties, and then one day you decide, here it is, I'm going to do my own business. So how did you come to that decision, and what was your biggest fear in taking that decision?
I think it's always been in the back of my mind since I left university, but it's also been an amazing journey working with so many creatives and amazing people and talented people over the years. But I think you get to a stage in your life where you think, I've got a lot of experience and I've still got a lot of energy and a lot of passion, and you just think, if I don't do it now, then what's the alternative? That you may become quite stale in your creative thinking. So I really wanted to be able to open myself up to work with a lot of the people that I've made great contacts along the way, but also have the opportunity to open myself up to creatives and talented people to work with. I think the scary thing, as most people will say, is having a consistent flow of work. That's probably one of the fears, but I think you've got to make the brave move sometimes to find out.
The majority of people that come from the creative industries that step into entrepreneurship, so becoming an owner, they're always fearing about, that the business take away your time from the design process, from the creative thinking process. How is your journey so far?
I think the main thing to always realise is that is to know your strengths and to know where you need support in certain areas of business. I think that's the key thing. If you try and be everything and do everything, the plates will smash. And I think you have to be able to focus on, you can't be an expert in everything, and that's why it's important to get the right people around you and create the right team. So I'm lucky enough that I have a great pool of freelancers that I work with. I also have a great coach who supports me on the business side. So I think it's important not to try and do everything yourself, because you'd be focusing on the wrong things, and it would never enable you to go and talk to that supplier or that amazing potential client. So you can't do everything.
Fair enough. I guess everybody has a role in the process, and I love the way you design your website, and I invite everybody watching, to go on your website, because particularly the sections where all of us made the mistake, contact us. And I love the sentence, we don't bite, we are lovely people. That is brilliant. I thought, if I want to design, I need to come to creative people. But what caught my attention was on the first page that you say, we create bold, brave spaces that inspire energy and emotions. Tell me a bit more about that. How do you undertake design?
I think that is the one thing I absolutely love about being in the hospitality industry, is it gives you the opportunity, the opportunity to create experiences and really have an impact when somebody walks into that space and you make them feel a certain way. That could be through the materials, through the lighting, through the smells, through the sounds. It's like theatre in a way, and being bold in your thinking enables you to create these really high energy spaces. And that's what I love about it, because you can really, every project is different, and you can create wow moments in different ways. That could be something like a massive lighting installation, or it could be the very small light touches that is unexpected, that, I don't know, somebody presses a button to order their favorite drink, or I don't know, but it's about really getting under the skin of creating an immersive customer experience, really.
Considering that you are a specialist in hospitality, and I can see, the enthusiasm and love for hospitality comes out from everywhere. When you speak about hospitality, you light up, basically. But what are the unique considerations and challenges when it comes to designing hospitality spaces when compared to other spaces that got nothing to do with hospitality?
So, for example, you mean if I'm working on residential projects?
Yeah, hospitality compared to residential, let's say.
Yeah, you have to have a really different approach. I think it's a lot more of a personal experience doing residential, because it's important that you have a really good, that you're both on the same page with your residential client. It's as important for hospitality, obviously, but sometimes in hospitality you're working most of the time with a much bigger team, and you do need to form really good understanding with your client. But in residential, you have to be a really good listener. You're designing their personal space, so you have to spend that time understanding and getting to know them, I think. And you're dealing with somebody's personal funding, which again is different from somebody running a business where they have deadlines. So you have to approach it differently, and sometimes you have to get clients out of their comfort zone. But you can only do that when you really understand them, I think, because they have to live with that space day in, day out. So it's a different type of consideration, I think, and I enjoy that experience as well, because you you design in a different way, and sometimes you might go to a vintage fair with a residential client, where you might not do that together with a hospitality client. It is a different way of working. But also you can implement your hospitality experience into residential, residential can take a lot of time on site, which can be very frustrating. But I think if being commercially trained and using that experience in the residential world is something that I think is can really work for residential clients, and also bringing an experience of bespoke joinery, and having that experience of working in hospitality that you can bring into residential. So I think having a hospitality head for residential design can be really exciting.
But what are the challenges of designing hospitality places, for example?
The challenges of designing hospitality spaces, budget is always a big one, and understanding the budget right at the beginning as well. Also, timescales can be very challenging. As we know, clients are under immense financial pressure. So if they've taken a site, they need to employ staff, they need to get that site open. So working to program is another really, really important element. Creating that experience is just as important. If you don't create that customer experience that works for that brand, you need to understand that brand, and you need to design that with an understanding of the brand and build that narrative right at the beginning. But you can only do that when you understand the brand. Also, it's important that when you build this really exciting narrative at the beginning, that you can see that through, because we talked about value engineering, and a lot of changes can be made on site. We know the challenges when things are ripped out and they say, no, there's bits of structure here. And so there's always going to be obstacles. And also the last thing is having a good team and communication.
That's incredible. The common single answer is time. And people, particularly the designers, suggest that there is not enough time to do the creative thinking, because the time frame requested by project, they're so narrow and so short that you can't even think properly, or get the right design in place, because, sometimes they're totally unrealistic, the time frame they're asking. And it's interesting, everybody says that. Everybody, in every region, and we interviewed more than 60 people from all over the world, is a common theme everywhere. So it's not just a culture or a geographical area. I think it's common practice. I have to come to that conclusion.
But I think that's managing that right at the beginning, because, if you've got a startup, for example, that has never been through the whole process of seeing a project through on site, that they might not be aware. A lot of the time, especially if they haven't done it before, they're not aware of the timescales and how long it takes. And if a project needs to go out for tender, for example, you have to wait 4 weeks just for the costs, and then you have to go through all the tender analysis. And so I think it's managing the program at the beginning.
Where do you tend to get your design inspiration from mostly?
I think that depends on the project, I think. So if you were designing a restaurant, for example, that was serving a type of food from a certain country, you might draw inspiration from the cultures of the origins of the food. if you're, it really depends. It's project specific, I think, and going to lots of exhibitions, going to lots of trade shows, and exposing yourself to what's out there in the design world, and feeding yourself with what's going on out there is really important, and consistently doing that.
One of the things that surprised me the most is that nowadays everybody talking about sustainability and so forth, but out of 61 episodes of the podcast, and I asked the same question to everybody, how many of your clients include an area of sustainability in your design brief? And everybody says 9 out of 10 they don't ask at all. So what's your experience on that in general?
Yeah, so when I'm starting on a project, I always have a stupidly long list of questions that I always like to, have a workshop with the client and gather as much information. And one of those questions is, how important is sustainability? You might know some of those answers because it might be an established brand that sustainability is really at the heart of what they do. So sometimes you might know whether that brand has sustainability ethics, but sometimes you say to a client, they say, yeah, I'd like it to be sustainable, but once costs come back, that can be a bit of a distant memory. And I think as designers, it's our responsibility that we ingrain sustainability into our designs, and it shouldn't be, it's got to the point where it can't be just an add-on or a tagline at the end when the PR is going out. We're at a tipping point of environmental change, and we need to do more. I need to do more. We need to do more. It can't be, that over there has some sort of recycled materials in it. Our industry is extremely wasteful, and we know that. And I think we need to change our mentality of how we approach projects. And we can't carry on how we are, where we just go in, we strip everything out, everything goes into a skip. It can't carry on like that. So I think what we do need to do, and what a lot of designers are taking on board, is the first thing to do is go onto a site and see what can be retained. That could be kitchen equipment, it could be mechanical, it could be the bar structure that you're going to reclad, it could be that you could salvage some of the lighting, for example. And also, the furniture is a key thing in what we do. Can you repurpose that? And I think that's the first thing that we should do before we do anything with the site. And then I think once we establish what we can repurpose, we then need to look at how our design scheme, we need to be working to a circular economy, not linear anymore. And to create that circular design, there may be good intentions, but how do you complete that circle? So, for example, if you specify some of the great furniture out there, like Matter furniture that did recycled coffee beans, they do a take back scheme, which a lot of companies do, like Acoustics, Skinflint lighting, which take back lighting, and then they give you 50% off your next purchase. Then when you take back the lighting, they recertify it and put it back in the market, for example. But I think what we need to do is almost we need to set out the principles for sustainability right at the beginning of a project. So if a chair can be returned to a manufacturer, and that makes that product circular, who is going to return that chair at the end? And when that site gets stripped out, who's going to return the carpet back to the manufacturer? Because a lot of flooring manufacturers, a lot of companies take back products and repurpose them. So that there needs to be a plan of action to complete that circle.
Yes.
And that needs to be seen through. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are really making a difference. I was speaking to an architect the other day, and they've designed modular joinery kit that, you guys might be doing this as well, but in hotel rooms, so it's all modular. 5 years time, they built it so it can be easily dismantled, refinished, put all back in again. Maybe they might put new doors or drawer fronts on it, for example, but there needs to be this thought pattern that we need to think about, because we know greenwashing happens and companies promote maybe 2 elements of their products that is recycled, but there may be really toxic bonding or there's sealants on it that doesn't allow it to be recycled at the end. I went in to see Kvadrat the other day, the material company, and I was looking at their new product called Really, which has they make tabletops, and they use 60 garments from textile industry that they reuse to make these tabletops. So I love the fact that there's these companies that are integrating with other industries, that are working together to produce some of these amazing products that are out there.
You know your stuff very well, from the brand of the material, what they produce, and your 20 years experience comes out the moment you talk. So, it's very clear. Now, considering your huge experience, I'm sure all your project has been an experience, but do you have one or two that is your proudest moment? Say, those are my best projects.
I think, well, obviously, Pattern-Haus is young, but former projects, one of them I worked on in London, which was the first complete wellness building. That was a very amazing experience, and to see the logistics of the sort of tallest tower block coming together. But also I feel proud of that project because there was a really big team of us that worked on that for probably nearly 3 years, and to get such a good, amazing end result. And I think for me, a project is successful if the client is then able to run a really successful business, and they're able to run a profitable business afterwards, but also there is a great customer experience that is happening within that space that you worked on. So I think, and then also I think going forward, I think it's really instilling that sustainability challenge is going to be the way forward to for another box to tick. That for me says a project is successful.
Obviously, you saw many project teams, colleagues, collaborators, and one of the other areas that everybody is talking about is gender equality. And how do you think the design industry is doing in really promoting gender equality, and in particular pushing women to go into leadership positions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite a big subject, actually. I think, when you kind of look at interior design, and it goes, oh, there's loads of women in interior design. That there is a high number of women in interior design, but actually, when you delve a bit deeper and you look at the design industry as a bigger picture, so architects, digital designers, craftspeople, photographers, looking at the design industry as a whole, because we cross over in our industry all the time. And there is actually a shocking imbalance as a whole. The Design Council did a report this year, and it's 23% of designers identify as female, and that's shockingly low. And that's looking at the design industry as a whole. And then when you look at statistics of design students, 7 out of 10 of those are female. So there's some kind of imbalance going on there. And we know that architecture, even though we know there's some amazing women leaders out there that are really setting the bar and really, setting an amazing path for the younger generation, there's still a very low. I think it was Design did a survey of the top 100 architect firms, and there was just 1 in 10 women were in high level positions. Right. So there needs to be some kind of change, and I think when women you start seeing women leave the industry sort of in their early 30s and not re-entering the industry, and I think there seems to be it's hard. We know that being in the creative industry can be really tough time-wise, because you have to put the hours in. But I think that we need to look at how designers are supported, that they can have a great design career and reach, and be in leadership roles and have a family, So there needs to be flexible hours, support with childcare. And I think women who have children later on in life that are reach a leadership role and then have children, they're in a position where they can sometimes dictate and they can afford childcare. But when junior designers, it's a challenge, But I think mentorship is really important, and I think girls being mentored, and this is about diversity as well, that there needs to be more, mentoring at a younger age, so girls know the opportunities within both the design world and the construction industry, because obviously there's a low level of women in a lot of construction areas. And I think mentoring for students and mentoring within companies is really important, because we want to create a balance. It's important. If you're a bunch of creatives, the more diverse you are and the more gender balance there is, the more amazing creative ideas you've got from a diverse group of people.
I think your views are very much aligned with the majority of people in the creative industry. Not enough is being done to try to push women into leadership positions, and also not many young people are mentored or coached to also enter in that mentality or become a leader. In that way, you're absolutely right. Now, considering all the experience that you have accumulated all these years, and where do you want to see Pattern-Haus in the next 5 to 10 years? What would be your ideal scenario? I know it's we're talking big stuff in here, but
I think one of my important things that is a really key thing for me is collaboration. And that means collaborating with contractors, project managers, craftspeople, designers, so my key thing is to create, when a project comes in, to be able to pull the right team and the right skills together, and forming teams that have great communication and great creativity and great drive and a good understanding of the industry. That's one of my key aims, is then you can deliver the best projects. I think you need to create some kind of flexibility with that as well. So, having a really big workforce is sometimes not the best way forward. Because I think it's important that as a creative business, you're able to pull in the right talents for the right projects. So I think that's one of my key aims, is to ensure that I'm delivering the best design with the best team, and really working with a great range of clients.
Because throughout your literature, whether it is social media or even your website, the word collaboration pops up very often, everywhere almost. And it's interesting because an artist normally tries to sing his own song, his own bell, as opposed to say, actually, I want to share my experience with everybody, so that for the optimal result. And it's a great philosophy. I praise you for that. I was very impressed. Again, I wasn't joking when I say about your website. It delivers a very clear message, which you just described beautifully. And now, considering that there is a lot of talent out there, and the young talent, so what will be your advice for the one that enter the industry now?
That is a good question. I think it's important I think as a junior designer, sometimes you can get pigeonholed quite easily if you're really good at something. So if you're really, really great and fast at the technical aspect, for example, everybody be like, great, this is brilliant, we can get you to do all the drawings. But it's really important that the young designers coming in get a real range of experience. And because in a lot of design companies, you don't just sit doing drawing packages, you have to take a project from start to finish. And being stuck in the studio all the time doing one certain task or working on a certain area doesn't allow you to go out and talk to the contractors and see how things are constructed. Because I remember when I first started in technical drawings, and then when I went to my first workshop visit, I was like, oh, I didn't realize they make it and over the years of just going and visiting and seeing how things are made and watching how things are constructed on site, sometimes you think, oh, that it's not as complicated as I thought. And then other areas you think, oh wow, I really need to learn about this. So my advice is to try and push to be taken to site and be taken to that workshop visit, and also go and listen to CPDs and broaden your mind and get off Pinterest and which is easy to do. But go in and learn the whole experience.
Because a lot of your colleagues says that the biggest enemy for the design community is Pinterest.
Yeah, it's so easy. And years ago, you'd never turn up at a meeting and a client would have pages and pages of mood boards to show you. So it's interesting, but I think it's so important to not get complacent. And when you're you're working to really tight deadlines, you have to resist not going down the easy route. You have to look at the bigger picture and close Pinterest sometimes. Yeah.
I want to ask you a question, which is something new and which bugs me a lot, because I come back to, I'll give you my thought on that. But I was in a conference last week and they were debating whether ChatGPT, this kind of artificial intelligence, is a threat to the creative industry.
I mean, I think there is some amazing things going on with AI. I mean, I'm not an expert, but there is a lot of tech that is supporting sustainability. It's helping companies to track their carbon footprint, and there's helping to map how far products are, what their pollution levels are, I guess. But I think it's never going to replace one-to-one interaction with clients and overtake the creative process, where yes, it can be helpful to manufacturing, but actually you can't replace the creative brain.
This interior architecture firm presented the result of a real pitch they did to a client. So they got a design brief and put it in ChatGPT, and he gave an answer of what the building may look like from the client brief. And then they use their creative talent to come up with a vision for that. When they presented the two designs to the client chose the one from ChatGPT.
Oh, wow.
But what is interesting, from a concept point of view, it was brilliant. He presented even the actual rendering of what they were talking about. But from a costing point of view, it was massively different, huge compared to their creative process. So again, yes, he may answer the question on one side, he come up with crazy idea, and then just to summarize, now I don't know the details, I just saw the rendering. But on the other one, there are so many aspects, exactly what you say. Your 20 years experience cannot be wiped out by a computer. The practical experience in the job site is impossible.
Scary. It's so scary. I mean, we've seen such a progression with rendering. It's amazing, and I think there's some positives there, and it will be interesting to see where it goes. Or for it to take over the whole process is, it can't replace it. Well, I say that, but
I saw a posting in Instagram of a building in construction, and the general contractor, created a banner, ChatGPT, please build this. Like to say, if you know how to do everything, come here and start building this building. It was brilliant.
I mean, it is amazing. I know the technologies with 3D printing, for example, that is really phenomenal, because that goes back to the sustainability conversation. And there's 3D printing that's been developed that they use post-consumer plastic bottles, for example. So it can 3D print, say, reception desks, and probably, and also great for exhibitions that are going to be assembled for a week, for example. That can then be taken back and reprinted as another piece of furniture, or something else. And there's zero waste. I mean, there's obviously energy costs. So technologies like that are really supporting and having an impact on sustainability. So I think there is some really positive sides to it.
I can stay here hours speaking to you, because it's so interesting, and listening to your stories and that. But unfortunately, we're coming almost to the end, and like the end of all our interviews is the key question. If I take a white canvas and place it on top of the Big Bang in London so everybody can see it, what message would you write on that?
I would put a message. I'm not sure how I would word it, but I would put some kind of inspiring message to people to never lose their creativity, because that is something that feeds energy. And so I would probably put something inspiring about people finding their creativity. Everybody can be creative in a way that would enhance their life, I think.
You've been very consistent with your answer.
It's cheesy, but I think you'd want to put something that fed everybody's well-being, I think.